Michael had driven over 10,000 rides in 6 years, 10,000 strangers, 10,000 destinations, 10,000 stories he'd never know the ending to. But on this cold November night, his last passenger would change everything, not because of who got into his car, but because of what he'd been running from all along. Sometimes the most dangerous journey isn't across town. It's the one that forces you to face yourself. And sometimes, the person you think you're saving is actually saving you.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing.
Michael's hands gripped the steering wheel at precisely 10 and 2 o'clock. After 6 years of driving for Uber, some habits became permanent. The digital clock on his dashboard read 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until his shift ended, until he could return to his empty apartment and pretend to sleep for another restless night. The streets of downtown Seattle glistened with recent rain. Neon signs reflected off puddles, turning the pavement into a kaleidoscope of reds and blues. Michael preferred night shifts, fewer questions from passengers, fewer expectations for conversation, fewer reminders of the life he used to have. His phone chimed. One last ride request. Michael stared at the screen. The pickup location was in the financial district, just 4 blocks away. The destination showed an address near the Canadian border, almost 2 hours north. His finger hovered over the decline button. It was late. He was tired. Tomorrow would be another day of the same routine. But the surge pricing caught his eye. 3 times the normal rate. That could cover his rent for the week. He accepted. The passenger's name appeared. Derek Morrison. 4.8-star rating. Michael pulled away from the curb, navigating through the sparse late-night traffic. The financial district stood mostly dark at this hour, glass towers looming like silent giants. Only a few windows still glowed with the desperate light of people working too late. The pickup spot was in front of a high-rise office building. Michael pulled to the curb, checking his mirrors. The street was empty, except for a few parked cars and a homeless man pushing a shopping cart 2 blocks down. Then he saw him. A man in an expensive charcoal suit burst through the building's revolving doors, moving with urgent precision. He carried no briefcase, no bag. His tie was loosened, and even from a distance, Michael could see the sweat on his forehead despite the cold November air. Derek yanked open the rear door and slid inside. "Drive. Just drive." Michael glanced in the rearview mirror. Derek was looking back at the building, his jaw clenched. The man's hands were trembling. "You're Derek Morrison?" "Yes. Please, we need to go, now." Michael had learned not to ask questions. In 6 years, he'd picked up people leaving affairs, people running from fights, people making mistakes they'd regret by morning. Their stories weren't his business. He pulled into traffic. Derek immediately turned his body toward the rear window, watching the street behind them. His breathing was rapid and shallow. Michael could see the man's chest rising and falling in the mirror. "Everything okay back there?" "Fine. Everything's fine." Derek's voice was tight. "Just drive to the address. I'll double the fare if you get me there fast." Money. Always about money. Michael had learned that too. He accelerated, taking the on-ramp to I-5 North. The highway stretched ahead, mostly empty. 18 18-wheelers and a scattered few cars were the only company at this hour. For the first 15 minutes, neither man spoke. Michael kept his eyes on the road. Derek kept his eyes on the traffic behind them, occasionally checking his phone, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. Michael noticed Derek wasn't making calls, wasn't texting, just staring at his phone like it might explode. The silence felt heavy, oppressive. Michael had experienced uncomfortable silences before, but this was different. This felt dangerous. "Bad night?" Michael heard himself ask, immediately regretting it. Derek's eyes snapped to the mirror, meeting Michael's gaze. For a moment, the man looked like he might not answer. Then his expression softened slightly. "You could say that." Derek leaned back against the seat, running a hand through his dark hair. You ever have one of those nights where everything you've built just collapses? Michael's grip tightened on the wheel. He knew something about collapse, about watching everything you love disintegrate while you stand helpless. Yeah, I've had those nights, he said quietly. Derek seemed to study him in the mirror. How long you been driving? 6 years. Long time. You like it? Michael considered the question. Did he like it? He'd never thought about it that way. It was what he did, what filled the hours, what kept him moving forward without actually going anywhere. It's fine. It pays the bills, keeps me dizzy. Busy is good. It means you don't have to think. They passed a sign. 87 miles to the Canadian border. Michael's fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, but there was a 24-hour gas station about 40 miles ahead. He usually stops there on these rare long-distance trips. A place called Murphy's, run by a woman named Sarah who worked the graveyard shift and always had fresh coffee brewing. Michael's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. He declined the call immediately. "Someone looking for you?" Michael asked, then immediately wanted to take it back. Not his business. Never his business. But Derek surprised him by answering. "My wife." Ex-wife. Soon-to-be ex-wife. I guess it doesn't matter now. Michael said nothing. In the mirror, he watched Derek stare out the window at the dark landscape rushing past. 15 years. 15 years of marriage. 2 kids. A house in Bellevue with a view of the lake. And I destroyed it all in one night. Michael's instinct was to offer some platitude, some meaningless comfort. But he'd learned those words were empty. When his wife, Lisa, died 3 years ago, everyone had offered the same useless phrases. Time heals. She's in a better place. Stay strong. None of it meant anything. None of it brought her back. "I'm sorry," Michael said instead, because at least that was honest. Derek nodded, seeming to appreciate the simplicity. They drove in silence for another 20 miles. The highway narrowed, trees closing in on both sides. Civilization felt far away. It was just the two of them, the hum of the engine, and the white lines disappearing beneath the car. Michael's mind wandered to Lisa. It always did during the quiet moments. He thought about the last time he'd seen her smile, really smile, before the cancer ate away at everything that made her herself. He thought about how he'd promised to be strong, to take care of everything, to never give up. And then he thought about how he'd done none of those things. How after she died, he'd quit his high school history teacher, sold their house, and disappeared into a routine of meaningless drives with strangers. "There's a gas station coming up in about 15 miles. I need to stop." Derek tensed. "Can't we skip it?" "I might not make it to your destination. Better safe than sorry." Derek was silent for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but make it quick." What he didn't know was that at that very moment, 200 miles away, a team of FBI agents were reviewing security footage from Derek's office building. And what Derek didn't know was that Michael had his own reasons for wanting to disappear into the night. Both men were running. Both men were about to discover you can't outrun the truth.
Murphy's gas station appeared like a beacon in the darkness. The fluorescent lights created a bubble of artificial day in the surrounding night. Michael pulled up to pump number 3. "I'll just be a few minutes," he said. Derek nodded, but his eyes were scanning the parking lot. There was only one other vehicle, a beat-up pickup truck that looked like it had been parked there for days. Michael stepped out into the cold air. November in Washington state meant temperatures hovering just above freezing. He inserted his credit card and began pumping gas, watching the numbers climb on the display. Through the station's large windows, he could see Sarah behind the counter. She looked up and waved. Michael raised a hand in return. Sarah was probably in her late 20s, with tired eyes and the kind smile. She'd mentioned once that she was a single mom, working nights because childcare was cheaper that way. Michael respected that kind of determination. Derek remained in the car, his face illuminated by his phone screen. The pump clicked off. Tank full.
Michael replaced the nozzle and headed inside, thinking about getting coffee for the rest of the drive. The bell above the door chimed as he entered. The store was empty except for Sarah. "Michael," she smiled warmly. "Long night?" "Long trip, going up near the border." "Brave man. It's creepy up there at night." She gestured to the coffee station. "Fresh pot. Made it 20 minutes ago." "You're a saint." While Michael poured coffee into a large cup, Sarah glanced out the window at his car. "Your passenger looks stressed." Michael followed her gaze. Derek was still hunched over his phone, but now his hand was pressed against his forehead. "Yeah, he's having a rough time." "Aren't we all?" Sarah said with a knowing smile. Michael paid for the coffee and was turning to leave when the television mounted behind the counter caught his attention. Sarah had the news on, volume low, but the image on the screen made Michael freeze. It was Derek. Not just someone who looked like Derek. It was definitely him. Same face, same dark hair, same sharp features. The photo looked like a professional headshot. Michael's eyes darted to the headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen. "Manhunt underway for Seattle investment banker." His heart began to pound. "Can you turn that up?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Sarah grabbed the remote and increased the volume. The news anchor's voice filled the small store. "Derek Morrison, a senior investment banker at Pacific Northwest Financial, is wanted for questioning in connection with the disappearance of over $40 million from client accounts. Morrison was last seen leaving his office building in downtown Seattle at approximately 11:45 p.m. Authorities warn that Morrison may be attempting to flee the country. He is not considered dangerous, but anyone with information about his whereabouts should contact Seattle police immediately." The screen showed another image. Derek standing with a woman and 2 children, smiling at some family gathering. The caption read, "Morrison with wife Jennifer and children, photo from 2022. Michael's coffee cup trembled in his hand. Sarah's eyes widened as she looked from the TV to the car outside. "Is that—" "I don't know," Michael lied automatically. "I mean, it looks like him, but it was him. Absolutely, definitely him." Michael's mind raced. What should he do? Call the police? Confront Derek? Keep driving and pretend he hadn't seen anything? His phone was in his pocket. He could excuse himself to the bathroom and call 911. This wasn't his problem. He was just a driver, just someone trying to get through another night. But $40 million. That kind of money destroyed lives. How many people had Derek stolen from? How many retirements had he obliterated? How many families had he ruined? Michael thought about Lisa again. About how medical bills had drained their savings. About how they had to beg for payment plans, for mercy from billing departments, for more time. About how some faceless person at an insurance company had denied her experimental treatment that might have saved her life because it wasn't cost-effective. People like Derek, people who stole, who put profits over people, who destroyed lives from behind expensive desks, they were part of the system that had killed his wife. His hand moved toward his phone. Then the bell above the door chimed. Derek walked in. Michael's heart stopped. Had Derek seen the TV? The news was still playing, but the segment had moved on to a story about a local high school football team. "Hey," he managed a weak smile. "Bathroom?" Sarah pointed toward the back. "Through that door, on your right." "Thanks." Derek walked past Michael without seeming to notice anything unusual. As soon as the bathroom door closed, Sarah grabbed Michael's arm.
"That's him," she whispered urgently. "That's absolutely him. We need to call the police." Michael looked at the bathroom door. He could hear water running. "I know," he said quietly. Sarah already had her phone out. "I'm calling now." "Wait." Michael grabbed her wrist gently. "Just wait a second." "Wait! Michael, that man stole $40 million. He's a criminal." I know. Just let me think." But thinking was hard. Michael's thoughts were a tangled mess of fear, anger, and something else. Something that felt almost like sympathy. Derek had looked so broken in the car, so defeated. He talked about destroying his life, about his marriage ending. Maybe he'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe he was trying to make it right. Or maybe he was just running, like everyone else. The water stopped. The bathroom door opened. Sarah looked at Michael, her phone still in her hand. Her expression was clear. We're doing this now. But Michael shook his head slightly. Derek emerged, drying his hands on his pants. Ready? He asked Michael. Yeah, Michael heard himself say. Let's go. They walked out together. Sarah stood behind the counter, phone clutched tightly, watching them leave. Michael could feel her disappointment, her confusion. She thought he was making a mistake. Maybe he was. Back in the car, Michael started the engine. The gas station's lights cast long shadows across Derek's face. Nice place. Small towns like this, everyone probably knows everyone. Probably. Michael pulled back onto the highway. His hands were shaking slightly on the wheel. His mind screamed at him, turn around, go back, call the police. This is not your problem. This is not your responsibility. But he kept driving north. 5 miles passed in silence. Then 10. Finally, Derek spoke. You saw the news, didn't you? Michael's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he considered lying. But what was the point? Yeah, I saw it. Derek nodded slowly, as if he'd expected this answer. And you're wondering why you're still driving? Why you didn't call the police back there? The thought crossed my mind. But you didn't. Derek leaned forward slightly. Why? Michael didn't have a good answer. Or maybe he had too many answers, all of them complicated. I don't know, he admitted. You do. Derek's voice was calm, almost gentle. You want to know the truth. You want to hear my side before you make a decision. Do I? Yeah, because you've been where I am. Maybe not exactly, but close enough. You know what it's like when everything falls apart, when the whole world turns against you and suddenly you're the villain in everyone else's story. Michael said nothing, but Derek had struck something true. My wife. She was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's 2 years ago. She's only 42, Michael. 42 years old and forgetting our children's names, forgetting we're married, forgetting me. Michael's chest tightened. The treatments aren't covered by insurance. Experimental drugs, special care facilities, round-the-clock nursing. We burned through our savings in 6 months. I mortgaged the house, maxed out every credit card. It wasn't enough. It's never enough. The road ahead blurred slightly. Michael realized his eyes were wet. So you stole the money, Michael said, his voice rough. I borrowed it. Derek's voice hardened. I was going to pay it back. I had a plan. There was an investment opportunity, something that would triple the returns in 3 months. I could have put everything back before anyone noticed. I could have saved Jennifer. But it didn't work out. No, it didn't work out. Derek laughed bitterly. The investment was a fraud, a fucking Ponzi scheme. I lost everything. The client's money, my reputation, my career. And Jennifer, she's being moved to a state facility next week because I can't afford to keep her where she is. Silence filled the car. Michael understood now. Understood the desperation, the impossible choices, the way love could drive you to destroy everything. He thought about Lisa's last days, how he'd begged the hospital for more time, more tests, more anything, how he'd looked at her wedding ring and thought about selling it, about selling everything if it meant one more week, one more day, one more hour. He'd never stolen money, but would he have, if given the chance? If stealing $40 million could have saved Lisa, would he have done it? In that moment, Michael made a decision that would change both their lives. But neither man knew that Sarah had made a call the instant they left. Neither man knew that police were already setting up a roadblock 20 miles ahead. And neither man knew the real truth about what Derek had done, a truth that would turn everything upside down.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Where are you actually going? Michael asked. That address you put in, is it real? Derek hesitated, then shook his head. No, there's nothing there. It's just somewhere far away. The border? Maybe. I have some cash, enough to disappear for a while. I thought maybe I could figure things out, find a way to make this right. You can't outrun this, Michael said. You know that, right? They'll find you. Eventually, they always find you. Maybe, but at least I'll have tried. At least I won't have just given up. The highway stretched endlessly ahead. Michael felt like he was driving toward nothing, toward the edge of the world. Pull over, Derek said suddenly. What? Pull over. Stop the car. Michael glanced in the mirror. Derek's expression had changed. The desperation was still there, but something else had joined it. Resignation, maybe. Or acceptance. Michael found a wide spot on the shoulder and pulled over. He put the car in park, but left the engine running. They sat on the side of a dark highway, trees pressing in from all sides, no other cars in sight. Derek opened his door. What are you doing? Michael asked. Letting you go. Derek stepped out. The cold air rushed in. You don't need to be part of this. I'm not dragging you down with me. Michael twisted in his seat. Where will you go? I'll walk. There must be a town somewhere up ahead. I'll figure it out. Derek started to close the door, but Michael surprised himself by getting out too. They stood facing each other in the darkness, their breath visible in the freezing air. You can't walk in this cold. You'll die out here. Maybe that's what I deserve. Don't be stupid. The words came out harsher than Michael intended. Your wife needs you. Even if you go to prison, she needs to know you tried everything. She needs to know you didn't give up. Derek's face crumpled. I've already lost her. She doesn't even remember me most days. But sometimes she does. And those moments matter. Those moments are everything. I was thinking about Lisa again. About the morphine-hazed days at the end when she drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she'd open her eyes and see me and smile, really smile, like everything was normal, like they were just at home on a Sunday morning. Those moments had been agony and grace all at once. I lost my wife 3 years ago. Cancer. Stage 4. We had 6 months from diagnosis to the end. 6 months to watch her disappear. Derek looked at him with sudden understanding. I know what it's like to feel helpless, to want to do anything, even terrible things if it means one more day with them. But Derek, this isn't the way. Running isn't the way. What else is there? Face it. Go back. Tell them the truth. Yeah, you'll probably go to prison, but you'll do it with integrity. You'll do it knowing you tried to make it right. They'll destroy me. I'll lose everything. You've already lost everything, Michael said, not unkindly. Now you get to choose what happens next. You can run and die out here alone and hunted, or you can go back and face what you did. Maybe you find some kind of redemption. Maybe you don't. But at least you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror. Derek was quiet for a long time. Then he laughed, a broken sound that might have been a sob. You're a good man, Michael. Better than me. I'm not. I've been running too, just in a different way. They stood in the cold, 2 men who'd lost everything, who'd both been running from themselves. Then they saw the lights, red and blue flashing in the distance behind them, multiple vehicles moving fast. Shit, Derek whispered. Michael's stomach dropped. Sarah had called. Of course she had. She'd done the right thing. The police cars were closing fast, maybe half a mile away now. Derek looked at Michael, and in his eyes was a question. What do we do? Michael could get back in the car and drive. Maybe they'd make it to the border. Maybe they'd find some back road, some way to slip through. Maybe Derek would disappear into Canada and Michael could go back to his empty life. Or Michael could do what Lisa would have wanted him to do. The police cars were a quarter mile away now. Michael raised his hands above his head. Derek stared at him for a moment.
then slowly, reluctantly, did the same. The car screeched to a stop around them, and suddenly there were officers everywhere, weapons drawn, shouting commands. "Get on the ground! Now! On the ground!" Michael dropped to his knees, then lay flat on the cold pavement, hands behind his head. Beside him, Derek did the same. Someone yanked Michael's arms back, handcuffs clicking into place. He turned his head and saw Derek being cuffed too, an officer's knee pressing into his back. "Michael Thompson?" a voice said above him. "Yes." "You're under arrest for aiding and abetting a fugitive. You have the right to remain silent." The words washed over him as they hauled him to his feet. They separated him from Derek, putting them in different police cars. As they pushed Michael's head down to get him into the back seat, he caught one last glimpse of Derek being led away. Their eyes met for a brief second. Derek mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Then the door closed, and Michael was alone in the back of a police car, the smell of old vinyl and cleaning solution filling his nose. Through the window, he watched the officers talking on their radios, organizing their convoy back to Seattle. One of them gestured toward Michael's Uber, still parked on the shoulder. The drive back took 2 hours. Michael sat in silence, hands cuffed behind him, watching the landscape pass in reverse. All those miles retraced. All that running for nothing. But strangely, Michael didn't feel scared. He didn't feel angry. He felt something he hadn't in 3 years. He felt awake. They took him to a Seattle police station, processed him, took his fingerprints and mugshot. They put him in an interrogation room. Gray walls, metal table, chairs bolted to the floor. Every detective show cliché come to life. A detective came in eventually. She was in her 40s with graying hair, pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. "I'm Detective Sarah Chen," she said, sitting across from him. "Do you understand why you're here, Mr. Thompson?" "I drove a criminal. I didn't turn him in when I should have." "You knew Derek Morrison was wanted, right?" "I saw the news at the gas station." "And yet you continued driving him toward the Canadian border." Michael nodded. "Yes."
Why? It was the question, wasn't it? The question he'd been asking himself. "Because I wanted to understand," Michael said finally. "I wanted to hear his side before I judged him." "And did you understand?" "Yeah, I did." Detective Chen studied him. "Derek Morrison stole $40 million, Mr. Thompson. That's not a mistake. That's not an accident. That's a crime that hurt a lot of people." "I know." "Do you?" She leaned forward. "Because I'm looking at you, and I'm trying to figure out why a man with no criminal record, a former teacher, a widower by all accounts trying to live a quiet life, why that man would risk everything for a stranger." Michael met his eyes. "Because 3 years ago, my wife died. And in the months before she died, I would have done anything to save her. I would have sold everything, stolen if I had to, burned down the world if it meant one more day with her. I didn't have to make that choice. But Derek did. And he made the wrong one. But I understand why he made it." Detective Chen was quiet for a moment. "Derek Morrison's wife," she said finally, "doesn't have Alzheimer's." Michael blinked. "What?" "Jennifer Morrison is perfectly healthy. They're not getting divorced. She didn't even know he'd stolen the money until we told her tonight." The room seemed to tilt. "That's not—" He said, "He lied to you, Mr. Thompson. He told you a story he knew would make you sympathetic. A story about a dying wife, about desperation, about love. But it was all bullshit." Michael felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "Then why did he steal the money?" "Gambling debts. He'd been running up losses at an underground casino in Seattle for 2 years. He owed some very dangerous people a lot of money. When they threatened his family, he panicked. He embezzled from his clients to pay them off. But he was so convincing." "Sociopaths usually are." Detective Chen's expression wasn't unkind. "I'm sorry. I know you wanted to believe in him, but Derek Morrison used you. He manipulated you with a story designed to exploit your grief." Michael sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. Everything Derek had said, every word about his wife forgetting their children, about experimental treatments, about impossible choices, all of it had been a lie. He'd been played. Completely. Thoroughly played. But Detective Chen wasn't finished. What she said next would reveal a truth even more complicated than Michael imagined. The real story, the one that newspapers would never report, was about to unfold. And it would force Michael to confront something about himself he'd been hiding for 3 years.
However, Detective Chen continued, pulling out a folder. There's something else you should know. She opened the folder and spread several photographs across the table. Financial documents, bank statements, transfer records. When we arrested Derek, we found something interesting. Of the $40 million he stole, he'd already spent or gambled away about $38 million. The remaining $2 million? He'd moved it to an offshore account this afternoon, just before he left his office. So he was running with the money? That's what we thought at first. But then we looked at the account. She tapped one of the documents. It's not in his name. It's not in his wife's name. It's in the name of a medical research foundation. Michael stared at the paper, not understanding. The Pacific Northwest Cancer Research Initiative, Detective Chen read. Specifically, their experimental treatment division. Derek Morrison donated $2 million to fund research into stage 4 metastatic cancers this afternoon at 5:47 p.m. The room went very quiet. I don't understand, Michael said. Neither did we, so we dug deeper. Turns out Derek Morrison's mother died of cancer 15 years ago, the same type your wife had, according to our background check on you. Michael's throat felt tight. We think, Detective Chen said carefully, that when you told him about your wife, something in him snapped. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he saw a chance at redemption. Maybe he just wanted to do one good thing before his life completely fell apart. We may never know, but he took the last bit of money he hadn't lost and put it towards something that mattered. He still lied to me. About his wife, about everything. Yes, he did. Derek Morrison is not a good man, Mr. Thompson. He's a criminal who made terrible choices. But people are complicated. They can be monsters in one moment and do something decent in the next. It doesn't redeem them, but it matters. Michael thought about this. About how Derek had sat in his car and lied so convincingly. But also about how Derek had told him to stop the car, how he'd tried to let Michael go before the police arrived, how he'd thanked him at the end. What happens now? Michael asked. That depends on you. Detective Chen closed the folder. Technically, you aided a fugitive. You knew he was wanted, and you continued driving him toward the border. That's a crime. We could charge you, and you might face jail time. Michael's heart sank. But, she continued, there are mitigating factors. You eventually stopped. You surrendered peacefully. And honestly, Mr. Thompson, I don't think putting you in jail serves anyone's interests. You're not a criminal. You're just a guy who made a bad decision for understandable reasons. So we're willing to offer you a deal. Community service, probation, a fine. You'll have a record, but you won't go to prison. Your lawyer will hate it, but it's better than the alternative. I don't have a lawyer. You will. Public Defender's Office will assign you one. But, Mr. Thompson, I need you to understand something. She leaned forward, her expression serious. You can't save everyone. You can't fix other people's problems by drowning in them. Derek Morrison told you a story about a dying wife because he knew it would work on you. He knew you were vulnerable, and he exploited that. I know. Do you? Because I've seen a lot of people like you. Good people who've been through trauma, who lost someone they love, who spend the rest of their lives trying to make sense of it. And sometimes they make themselves martyrs.
They sacrifice themselves for people who don't deserve it because they couldn't save the person who did. Michael felt tears burning his eyes. Your wife died, Detective Chen said quietly. That's not your fault. You couldn't save her, and you can't spend the rest of your life saving everyone else to make up for it. The tears spilled over. Michael hadn't cried since Lisa's funeral, hadn't let himself. But now, in this gray interrogation room at 4 a.m, with the stranger showing him more kindness than he'd shown himself in years, he broke. I should have done more, he said, his voice cracking. There had to be something else, some other treatment, some other option. I gave up. I let her die. No, you didn't. You were there. You held her hand. You made her comfortable. You loved her. That's not giving up. That's all anyone can do. It wasn't enough. It never feels like enough, but it was. Detective Chen pushed a box of tissues across the table. Listen to me, Michael. You need to hear this. You didn't fail your wife. You didn't abandon her. You were a good husband who did everything he could, and now you need to forgive yourself and start living again. Michael wiped his eyes, his whole body shaking. I don't know how, he admitted. One day at a time, one choice at a time, starting with the choice to stop running. They sat in silence for a while. Michael gradually composed himself, breathing slowly, feeling something shift inside him. Not healing, not yet, but maybe the beginning of healing. Maybe permission to try. What happens to Derek? Michael asked finally. Federal prison, probably. 10 to 15 years if he cooperates. His wife is filing for a divorce. His kids won't speak to him. He'll lose everything. She paused. But that $2 million? That's going to fund research that might save lives. Maybe a lot of lives. So something good came from something terrible. That's the world we live in. Michael nodded slowly. I'll have someone take you home, Detective Chen said, standing. We'll be in touch about the charges and the deal. Get some rest. And Mr. Thompson, consider talking to someone. A therapist, a grief counselor, someone who can help you process what you've been through.
Okay, Michael said. I will. They processed his release, gave him back his personal effects, his wallet, his keys, told him where his car was impounded and how to retrieve it. It was dawn when he walked out of the police station. The sky was turning pink and gold over Seattle. The city was waking up, people heading to work, cars filling the streets, life continuing the way it always did. Michael stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the cold morning air. His phone had 23 missed calls, 3 from Uber, probably wondering where he and his car were. The rest from numbers he didn't recognize. Probably reporters already. He listened to one voicemail. It was from Sarah, the gas station attendant. Michael, it's Sarah from Murphy's. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I called the police because I thought it was the right thing to do, but I didn't know what you were dealing with. I hope you're okay. If you ever need someone to talk to or just want coffee, you know where to find me. Michael saved the message. He'd call her back later. Maybe take her up on that coffee. He started walking. He didn't know where he was going, but it felt good to move. The morning sun warmed his face. People passed him on the sidewalk. Business people in suits, students with backpacks, a woman walking 3 dogs. Normal people living normal lives. For 3 years, Michael had felt separate from all of this, like he was watching life happen behind glass. But now, walking through downtown Seattle as the city came alive, he felt present, here, real. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him. Hello? Mr. Thompson? A woman's voice, professional, but warm. This is Dr. Patricia Wells from Pacific Northwest Cancer Research Initiative. I'm calling about Derek Morrison. How did you get my number? Detective Chen gave it to me. She thought you'd want to know. The donation Mr. Morrison made yesterday, it's substantial. Enough to fund a new clinical trial for treatment-resistant metastatic cancers, the kind your wife had. Michael leaned against a building, suddenly needing support. We're naming the trial after her, if you'll allow it, Dr. Wells continued. The Lisa Thompson Memorial Trial. It won't bring her back, but it might save others. I thought you should know that her story, your story, is part of why this is happening. I don't understand. Derek Morrison told me something when he made the donation. He said he met someone who reminded him that even when we fail, even when we make terrible mistakes, we can still do one thing right. He said he met someone who showed him what real love looks like. I think he meant you, Mr. Thompson. Michael couldn't speak. Anyway, Dr. Wells said, I wanted to reach out. The trial will begin in 6 months. If you'd ever like to visit the facility, meet the researchers, see what your wife's legacy is helping to build, please call me. Thank you. Michael managed. Thank you.
Michael pulled his car, a newer model now, his old Uber finally retired, into the parking lot of the Pacific Northwest Cancer Research Initiative. It was a crisp April morning, the kind where spring felt possible after a long winter. He'd accepted Dr. Wells' invitation to visit. Part of him had been avoiding it, afraid of what emotions it might stir up. But his therapist, Dr. Rashid, a kind Pakistani man who specialized in grief counseling, had encouraged him to go. You're not running anymore, Dr. Rashid had said in their last session, so walk toward the hard things, see what happens. The building was modern, all glass and steel, with gardens planted around the entrance. Through the windows, Michael could see laboratories, people in white coats working at stations filled with equipment he didn't understand. Dr. Wells met him in the lobby. She was in her 50s, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. Michael, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. She led him through the facility, explaining the research in terms he could grasp. They were testing a new immunotherapy approach, something that trained the body's own immune system to recognize and attack cancer cells. It was promising. Early results showed response rates significantly higher than traditional treatments. This is because of Lisa? Michael asked. This is because of a lot of things coming together, but yes, the funding made it possible, and your wife's case file, which you gave us permission to access, has been invaluable. She was part of a very specific patient population that we're targeting. They walked through a corridor lined with photographs. Patients who'd participated in previous trials. Some had survived, some hadn't. All of them had been brave enough to try. I want to show you something, Dr. Wells said. She led him to a quiet room at the end of the hallway. On the wall was a plaque, the Lisa Thompson Memorial Trial, in memory of Lisa Marie Thompson, 1979 to 2022, beloved wife, teacher, and friend. Even in darkness, we can be light for others. Below the plaque was a photo Michael had provided, Lisa laughing at their wedding, her head thrown back, joy radiating from every inch of her. Michael's vision blurred. The quote, Dr. Wells said softly, is from something she wrote, a letter to her students that her principal shared with us. She wrote it 2 weeks before she died, telling them to be kind, to help others, to make their lives matter. I didn't know she had written that, Michael whispered. She was extraordinary, and now her legacy is helping us do extraordinary things. They stood in silence for a while. Michael thought about all the ways Lisa had touched lives he'd never know about, all the students she had taught, all the people she had smiled at in grocery stores, all the small kindnesses that rippled outward. There's someone else who wants to meet you, Dr. Wells said, if you're willing. Who? A patient. She's in the trial. She asked specifically about you. Dr. Wells led him to another part of the building, a more comfortable area with couches and soft lighting. A woman sat by the window, reading a book. She looked up as they entered. She was young, maybe 30, with a scarf wrapped around her head. Thin, but her eyes were bright and alert. "Michael," she said, standing. "I'm Amanda." They shook hands. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Amanda is responding incredibly well to the treatment. One of our success stories." "Don't jinx it," Amanda laughed. "But yeah, the tumors are shrinking. My oncologist is cautiously optimistic, which is the closest he gets to excited." "That's wonderful," Michael said. "I wanted to meet you because Dr. Wells told me about your wife, about what you've been through, and I wanted to say thank you." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "I have a 5-year-old daughter. 3 months ago, I was told to get my affairs in order, to say goodbye. And now I'm here, and I have hope. Because of Lisa. Because of you." Michael felt his own tears coming. I didn't do anything. You loved someone enough to keep going even after they were gone. You turned your grief into something that's saving lives. That's everything." They talked for an hour. Amanda told him about her daughter, about reading bedtime stories and playing in parks and all the normal things she thought she'd never do again. She showed him pictures on her phone, a little girl with pigtails and a gap-tooth smile. "She looks happy," Michael said. "She is, because her mom's not dying anymore, because science is giving us a chance." Amanda squeezed his hand. "Thank you. Really, thank you." When Michael left the facility, the sun was high in the sky. He sat in his car for a long time, not moving, just breathing. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, the gas station attendant. They'd been talking regularly, coffee once a week at a diner near her house. Nothing romantic. Neither one of them was ready for that. But something warm and real. Friendship, maybe. Or the beginning of it. The text read, "How did it go?" Michael typed back, "Hard. Good. I'll tell you about it later. Coffee tomorrow?" "Sounds perfect." He started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. He had somewhere to be, something he'd been putting off.
The cemetery was 20 minutes away. Michael hadn't visited Lisa's grave since the funeral. He'd told himself it was too painful, that he couldn't handle it. But maybe the truth was simpler. He'd felt too guilty, like he didn't deserve to be there. He parked and walked through the rows of headstones. Lisa's was under an oak tree, just beginning to show spring leaves. The stone was simple, elegant. Lisa Marie Thompson, beloved wife and teacher. Be kind, be brave, be light. Michael knelt on the grass. He brought flowers, lilies, her favorite. "Hi," he said quietly. "I'm sorry I haven't been here. I'm sorry for a lot of things." The wind rustled through the tree branches. "I met someone today, Amanda. She is alive because of you, because of the trial they named after you. There's going to be more like her, dozens, maybe hundreds eventually, all because you existed, all because your story mattered." He wiped his eyes. "I've been angry at myself for 3 years. Angry that I couldn't save you, angry that I gave up my life after you died. But I'm trying to do better. I'm seeing a therapist, I'm making friends, I'm living again. Not the same life we had. I can't have that. But a new one. A different one." A bird landed on a nearby headstone, tilted its head as if listening. "I met this guy, Derek. He did terrible things, but he also did one good thing at the end, and it mattered. It made me realize that we're all just trying our best, making mistakes, hoping something good comes from the mess. I think you would have understood that. You always saw people clearly, their flaws and their potential." Michael placed the flowers on the grave. "I love you. I'll always love you. But I'm going to live now. Really live. The way you wanted me to. The way you did, even at the end. Is that okay?" Of course, there was no answer. Just wind and birdsong and the quiet of the cemetery. But Michael felt something shift. Not closure, he wasn't sure that existed, but permission maybe. Permission to move forward. Permission to be happy again without betraying her memory. He stood, brushing grass from his knees. "I'll come back," he promised, "more often. I'll tell you about what I'm doing, who I'm meeting, how the trial is going. You're still part of my life, just in a different way now." He walked back to his car slowly, taking in the spring air, the sunshine, the sound of distant traffic, life happening all around him. When he got home, he made a decision. He called Detective Chen. She answered on the third ring. "Mr. Thompson, how are you?" "Good, actually. Listen, I wanted to ask you something. That community service I owe, is there any way I could do it at the Cancer Research Center? Maybe helping patients or working in the office or something?" There was a pause. Then, "Let me make some calls. I think we can arrange that." "Thank you." "Michael, I'm glad you're doing better." "Me too." That evening, Michael did something else he'd been avoiding. He opened his laptop and logged into his old email account, the one he'd abandoned after Lisa died. There were thousands of unread messages. He scrolled through them, deleting spam, saving a few from old friends. Then he found one that made him stop. It was from Lisa, sent 2 days before she died. The subject line read, "For when you're ready." His hand trembled as he clicked it open. "My love, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I had to leave you. But I need you to hear this. You gave me the most beautiful life. Every single day with you was a gift. Even the hard ones, even the scary ones at the end. You never once made me feel like a burden. You never once looked at me with anything but love. Now I need you to do something for me. I need you to keep living. Not just existing, but living. Be happy. Fall in love again if you can. Please don't be alone forever because of me. Help people. Teach again. Laugh. Dance. Do all the things we didn't get enough time for. Your grief is love with nowhere to go. So put it somewhere. Turn it into something beautiful. Be the light for others that you were for me. I'll love you forever, in this life and whatever comes next. Your Lisa." Michael read it 3 times, tears streaming down his face. But they weren't just tears of grief anymore. They were tears of gratitude, of release, of understanding. She'd given him permission. 3 years ago, she'd given him permission to move forward. He just needed time to hear it.
1 year later, Michael stood at a podium in front of 100 people. The Pacific Northwest Cancer Research Initiative was hosting their annual fundraising gala, and Dr. Wells had asked him to speak. He looked out at the crowd. Doctors, researchers, survivors, families. Sarah sat in the front row, smiling encouragingly. Amanda was there with her daughter, who'd drawn him a picture of a rainbow. His therapist, Dr. Rashid, had come to show support. And in the back, surprisingly, was Derek Morrison's ex-wife, Jennifer. She'd reached out to Michael 6 months ago, wanting to understand what had happened that night. They'd met for coffee, and she told him her side of the story. The shock of discovery, the betrayal, the anger, but also slowly, a kind of forgiveness. Not for Derek, not yet, maybe not ever, but for herself, for not seeing the signs, for being human. Michael cleared his throat and began. "A year and a half ago, I picked up a passenger. His name was Derek Morrison, and he was running from the consequences of his actions. I didn't know it then, but I was running too. From grief, from guilt, from life itself. That night changed both of us. Derek went to prison for his crimes. I went through a different kind of reckoning, facing the pain I'd been avoiding, the loss I hadn't properly grieved, the future I'd refused to imagine. But something unexpected happened. From Derek's worst action came an unintended gift. $2 million that's now funding research that's saving lives, including Amanda's." He gestured to where she sat, "a mother who gets to watch her daughter grow up. Including the 15 other patients currently in the trial who are seeing their tumors shrink, including the hundreds more who will benefit in the years to come. I don't tell you this to redeem Derek. He made choices that hurt people, that broke trust, that destroyed lives. He's serving his sentence, and that's as it should be. But I tell you this because it taught me something important about how complicated we all are. None of us are purely good or purely evil. We're all capable of tremendous kindness and terrible cruelty. We make mistakes, we hurt people, we fail.
And sometimes, even in our failures, something good can grow. My wife Lisa died 3 years ago. For a long time, I thought her death was the end of her story. But it wasn't. Her story continues in this research, in Amanda and patients like her, and every person who's touched by the work being done in her name. And my story didn't end either, even though for a while I wished it would. It changed. It got harder before it got better, but it continued. That's what I've learned. Our stories don't end when we think they do. They ripple outward in ways we can't predict or control. The choices we make, the love we give, the lives we touch, all of it continues long after we're gone. Derek Morrison made terrible choices, but his last choice, influenced by a conversation with a stranger on the worst night of his life, is now part of a story that's saving lives. That doesn't absolve him, but it matters. We're all just people trying to find our way through impossible circumstances. We're all carrying grief and guilt and fear. We're all one bad decision away from destroying everything. But we're also all one good choice away from changing a life. Maybe our own, maybe someone else's. The Lisa Thompson Memorial Trial has a 93% response rate. That means 93% of patients are seeing improvement. Some are going into remission. Some are stable. All of them have hope they didn't have before. That's because of science, because of brilliant researchers who dedicate their lives to solving impossible problems, because of patients brave enough to try experimental treatments, because of donors who fund this work. But it's also because of a woman who died 3 years ago and a man who wanted to honor her memory by doing one right thing in a life full of wrong ones. It's because of complexity and contradiction and the beautiful, terrible, messy truth of being human. So I ask you to remember this. You are not just your worst moment. You are not just your biggest mistake. You are not just your grief or your fear or your failure. You are also your kindness, your courage, your capacity to change, your ability to turn pain into purpose. My wife used to tell her students, be kind, be brave, be light. I didn't understand what that meant for a long time. I thought being light meant being happy, being okay, being healed. But now I know what it means. It means showing up even when it's hard. It means choosing to help even when you're hurting. It means finding purpose in the pain and sharing it with others who need it. That's what this trial does. That's what all of you do by being here, by supporting this work, by believing that even in the darkest moments we can create light. Thank you for letting me be part of this story. Thank you for carrying it forward. And thank you for reminding me that endings are never really endings. They're just new beginnings we haven't recognized yet. The room erupted in applause. Michael stepped back from the podium, his heart racing, his eyes wet. Dr. Wells hugged him. That was perfect. Sarah squeezed his hand. Amanda's daughter gave him the rainbow picture, which he promised to hang in his apartment. Later, after the event ended and most people had left, Michael found himself alone in the room where Lisa's plaque hung. He stood there, looking at her picture, at her smile, at the quote that had become a guiding principle. I did it, he said quietly. I turned the grief into something. I hope you're proud. He felt that rather than heard her answer, not words, but a feeling, warmth, love, permission to be happy. Michael took out his phone and texted Sarah, Want to get coffee? Real coffee, not just friendly coffee. Like a date. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, took you long enough? Yes. He smiled, a real smile, the kind he hadn't felt in years. As he walked out of the building into the evening air, Michael thought about Derek, sitting in a prison cell somewhere, living with his choices. He thought about all the passengers he'd driven over the years, all those temporary strangers whose stories he'd never know the endings to. He thought about how one night, one ride, one conversation had changed the trajectory of so many lives. And he thought about how we're all connected in ways we can't see or control, how our actions ripple outward, creating waves that touch shores we'll never stand on, how the worst and best of us can coexist, How redemption isn't a destination, but a direction. Michael got in his car, not to drive strangers, but to drive himself home, to his life, to his future. He wasn't running anymore. He was living. And somewhere in a research lab, cells were dividing, treatments were working, and people who'd lost hope were finding it again. All because a woman who loved fiercely, died gracefully, and left behind a legacy that refused to end. All because a man who had forgotten how to live remembered just in time. All because even in our darkest moments, even in our worst mistakes, we have the capacity to create light. That's the truth Michael learned that night on a dark highway with a stranger he lied to him. That's the truth that saved his life. We are all capable of extraordinary things. We are all worth saving. We are all more than our worst moments. And our stories never really end. They just become part of something bigger, something beautiful, something that continues on long after we're gone.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.